All right, welcome to the ultimate gladiator simulation, or at least the closest that I could create without bloodshed and bruises. So, you're going to get out your packet that looks like this. And the first part of this activity is just creating your gladiator. So you should have a dice that was included in your bag. And what you're going to do is you're going to roll the dice for each of your equipment categories here, and depending on what number you get on your die, you're going to select that, and that's what you get for attack or defense points when you're in the arena. Okay, so if you roll one of these numbers 1 through 6 for weapons, you'll end up with either, a sword or a trident, bow and arrows, and then that's worth a specific number of attack points. Then for armor, based on what you roll, what type of armor do you get? Do you get full scale armor? Do you get arm wraps? Do you get a tunic and sandals? What do you get? And that goes towards your defense points. And then for gear, do you get a fishing net? Do you get a shield? Do you get darts? And that again contributes either to your attack points or your defense points. So after you've rolled your dice 3 times and marked your selections, you're then going to add them up. How many attack points did you get? How many defense points did you get? And that's going to play a role in our simulation here. Then you'll notice on your next sheet, you get to then design your gladiator to fight in the Colosseum. So draw and write about what he's wearing, create his shield, or design a motto for him or her. What is the motto of your gladiator? Now, one side of your worksheet has an outline sketch of a body. The other side is just blank if you want to freehand it. Also, I printed that sheet for you twice because I know that when it comes to drawing, I tend to goof up. Okay, so you're only having to do one side of that worksheet because they replicate each other. So what type of headwear, what type of clothes or armor did you get from rolling your dice? What types of weapons, footwear? All right, so you can pause this video. You can work on designing your gladiator. And then when you are ready to enter the Colosseum, you can continue this video. All right. Entering the Colosseum. The sun blinds you as you step into the arena. 6 months ago, your tribe was defeated and assimilated into the Roman Empire. You watched with tears in your eyes as your childhood friend was led away in shackles and your family separated. Your mother was sent to be a slave with one general and your sister another. You, having been appraised to be physically fit and healthy, had only been spoken to once that day. You will fight for us now. Entering the Colosseum. You snap out of your wandering thoughts as the crowd cheers. Your master Marilla has entered you to be a part of the Colosseum's opening ceremony hosted by Emperor Titus. Hundreds of gladiators have been chosen for this special occasion, and Marilla is expecting her gladiators to perform well in this game. If you fight well and earn her honor, she may pay you back with money or even better, your freedom. Still, you have a long way to go before you can even think of rewards. Now, today's games differ from the usual gladiator games in that they are taking place in the Colosseum, the largest structure constructed for gladiator games yet. Today marks the 8th day of games and a 100-day-long celebration for one of Rome's biggest achievements. So far, animals, slaves, professional gladiators, and even sailors and their ships have participated in entertaining the crowds of Rome. When the gate opens, you have no idea what to expect until you see the outline of Felix the Nox. Okay, so these gladiators were seen to be the lowest of the low. They were given little to no equipment to fight with, and they were often allowed only to carry a short sword called a gladius, or a stick to fight with. They weren't trained in gladiator school, and most commonly their only purpose was to provide the audience gory, entertaining deaths. You and Felix circle each other carefully, Seeing as he has no helmet, you see the way his wide eyes and flushed cheeks betray his fear. Neither of you seems willing to make the first move, knowing that this match will end in blood for one of you. For a moment, all you hear is the sound of dust against your sandals. That is, until the crowd starts to boo. Felix knows that if the crowd gets too displeased, you both will die for sure. He takes a deep breath and rushes toward you, sword raised. So, roll your die, and whatever number is on your dice, you're going to add that number to your defense score now, and we're going to see what happens, okay? So on your sheet, for your defense score, you rolled your dice, take that number and add it, and now let's see what happens to you. If your dice roll plus your defense score is 1 or less, Felix slips past your weak defenses. His sword finds its way into your stomach. His eyes widen and he can't believe he actually pulled this off. As he takes back his blade and turns around to the arena, the crowd begins to boo. Your last thought is surprisingly sympathy for Felix as you see 3 heavily armored gladiators coming out to meet him. If your dice roll plus your defense score is 2 or more, you dodge Felix's clumsy attacks by simply stepping to the side. He stumbles past you, swinging his sword as he turns around. You swipe your weapon as he misses you again, catching bare skin. Felix stumbles this time to the ground and crumbles to the ground. Victory. Here's a fun fact. Being a Noxy gladiator served 2 purposes, not just 1. Not only were they meant to provide an easy, entertaining death to the audience, they were a good way for Romans to get rid of people they disliked. Specifically, Romans enlisted murderers, traitors, army deserters, Jews, and Christians to be Noxy. The Roman public loved seeing these groups of people be put to death in violent ways, which was a reminder to everyone about the social order every resident of Rome was in. Okay, a small respite. You take a deep breath as Felix's dead body is carted out of the arena floor. You take a moment to breathe in, relieved that you've defeated your first opponent? However, Noxy gladiators are small fish when compared to the ocean of opponents you've left to face, and when the gates open once more, your fears are confirmed as you find yourself coming face to face with Caius the Samnite. Samnite gladiators came from Samnium region in southern Italy. Originally, they were the tribe of people who lived in that area, but when Rome overtook the area, the warriors were taken as prisoners of war and brought back to Rome. Some of the earliest gladiators, Samnites, were armed with weapons similar to what they would have used in their own armies, and were directed to use the tactics they would in their own armies as well. Samnites were often forced as a group to compete against other clans. Romans liked to see the unique ways that each clan fought. So, armed with a large round shield and a long spear, Caius is a more well-armed opponent than Felix. However, he only wears a chest plate for armor, so the battle is still winnable if you plan your tactics right. Caius circles you, except unlike Felix, he has a purpose. You can see the experience in his measured steps and his steady grip of his spear. When he strikes, it takes you by surprise and you just barely dodge, and when he turns, he aims to strike you with his shield. You hop back and he's momentarily thrown off balance by the momentum of his actions, leaving a brief opportunity to attack. Roll your dice and add the number to your attack score now. Okay, so now we're looking at your attack points. So roll your die, take that number, and add it up to your attack points so we can see how you do against Caius. Alright, ready? If your dice roll plus your attack score is 5 or less, your attack misses Caius. He takes the opportunity to strike, his spear lodging itself in your shoulder before he strikes again with his shield. You fall dazed to the ground, and the last thing you see is Caius raising the spear again. If your dice roll plus your attack score is 6 or more, you hit Caius with your weapon. He's stunned momentarily and you move in for the kill. When the dust clears, you stand victorious over Caius, his shield rolling in the blood-matted dust of the Colosseum floor. Victory. Fun fact, Romans loved it when groups of gladiators fought. Comparable to championship games in modern sports, these were special events that displayed Rome's power to the people. In addition, they were often very exciting. Romans would often use prisoners of war to fight real Roman soldiers in recreations of famous Roman victories. In cases like these, the odds were often stacked against the prisoners of war. Underfed, under-equipped, and not rested, they stood little chance against the professional soldiers. So the attendants come out to remove Caius's body from the Colosseum, and you feel your body begin to get tired. But when you catch Marilla's eye in the stand, she shakes her head at you, and you know that means you have to continue to fight. Any honor you bring her will result in her favoring you. So you shake it off and turn to the door as it opens again. Ponus 3. Silvius the Equite. Equite gladiators were special gladiators who fought on horseback. Because they were more expensive to upkeep, they were armed with legitimate weapons and armor. Equites most often fought other equites in gladiator battles, and these battles often opened lengthier shows. The public enjoyed watching the speed and skill of the riders and the agility of the horses. To emphasize these aspects of the fights, equite gladiators wore light leather armor and fought with spears. Silvius mounts his horse as he walks in, and the crowd cheers loudly. Apparently, he's somewhat known among the people already, and they adore him and his majestic horse, Cassius. He makes a lap around the boundaries of the arena to wave at all of his fans before he gets his lance and rides up to you. Unlike the others, he doesn't hesitate much, if at all, before he attacks. With a loud "Yah!" shout, he kicks Cassius's side, and the rider and the horse gallop towards you, spear aimed right at your heart. Roll your dice and add that number to your attack score now. Let's see what happens. If the dice roll plus your attack score is 8 or less, you strike out as Silvius passes by, but your weapon only grazes the side of his chest plate. Knocked off balance, you fall to the ground, and dismounting, Silvius walks towards you and kicks your weapon away from your hands. The last thing you see is his imposing figure standing before you, spear in hand, blocking out the sun. If your dice roll plus your attack score is 9 or more, you swiftly use your weapon against Silvius. The attack slips past his armor, and injured, he falls to the ground, dust clouding the air. You step forward, arms raised for the final blow, but the crowd's noise catches your attention. You step back and see Marilla shake her head, hold her hand out, and point her thumb downward. You step back, and the injured Silvius is carried out. Victory. Fun fact. While many gladiator matches did result in violent, bloody death, it was also often not the case. Gladiators were expensive to train, feed, and keep in good care, so well-known or professional gladiators were often spared so that they could live another day and put on another show. Crowds would sometimes also vote to spare gladiators' lives by pointing their thumbs down, a signal which meant swords down, and meant that the losing gladiator was to be spared. A thought occurs to you as you wait for your next opponent. If the audience voted for Silvius to leave, his fate was not certain. You've heard rumors of Emperor Titus voting for the bravest, most deserving gladiators to be given their freedom from the arena. If you remain a gladiator, you know that it's likely you will never survive, especially with the remainder of the Colosseum opening festivities to go for several months. However, if you impress the crowd and the emperor enough, who knows what they would vote for you? The thought is fleeting, though, and it goes away as you see the door open once more. Opponent number 4, Samuel the Lion. Animals were occasionally used as opponents in gladiator games, but only for special circumstances. Audiences enjoyed not only the spectacle of seeing wild beasts fight, kill, and devour people, but they also enjoyed seeing the wildlife from the foreign regions Rome had conquered. Lions, rhinos, and giraffes were brought up from the south, bears from the north, and tigers from the east. Animals most often fought other animals, but games where animals were pitted against human gladiators were called venations, or wild beast hunt. Samuel comes out of the door, his metal collar connecting him to the chains his 6 handlers hold. When he's sufficiently out, they drop the chains and flee inside, leaving you alone with the beast. He turns to you and snarls, but besides the anger in his eyes, you can also see the evidence of mistreatment. His ribs jut out against his side, and you would guess they kept him hungry so that he would act fiercely in the arena. There are also healing wounds that look like sword marks, evidence that he has been in prior fights, but you think also evidence that he was the victor. You decide to take the initiative like Silvius did and rush forward with your weapon, not waiting for Samuel to get the upper hand. Roll your dice and add that number to your defense score now. Okay, so what happens? If your dice roll plus your defense score is 11 or less, Samuel moves much more swiftly than you imagined he could have. He barrels into you and throws you to the ground, your weapon clattering to the ground. You have only moments before you see Samuel's jaws approach. At least he won't be hungry for a while. If your dice roll plus your defense score is 12 or more, your armor and equipment is the only thing that saves you from a swipe of Samuel's sharp claws. Quickly you retaliate, striking out and hoping that the one blow can save you from certain death. You're almost surprised when your weapon hits Samuel, and even more shocked when he falls back with a whimper, his mood changing almost immediately. You rush forward to give the death blow, but his handlers come back out and fetch the injured lion to go back inside. Victory. Animals were treated in many different ways in gladiator games. The highly trained animals were used over and over again, and they were well taken care of, just like a professional gladiator would have been. However, sometimes animals were very disposable. Starving animals would fight each other to the death. Also, professional gladiators would sometimes kill starving animals for sport. Emperor Commodus himself decapitated a giraffe in the Colosseum. Perhaps most gruesome, though, were the events where defenseless humans were tied to stakes and simply eaten by the animals. When you look to Marilla next, you cannot believe your eyes. Next to her is the Emperor, and they are pointing to you. Your heart pounds with excitement. This could be a very good thing if the Emperor notices you, and your dreams of freedom come back to the front of your head. Although your body is bruised and your mind is tired, when the speaker announces that this is to be your final fight, and it will end in freedom or in death, your heart swells. You turn to face the final opponent who steps through the door. Septima, the Gladiatrix. The term gladiatrix, which refers to a female gladiator, is a more contemporary invention. Gladiators were almost always male, but there are scattered accounts of women gladiators fighting in gladiator combat. They were so rare that they didn't have a title or a special name in ancient Rome, and what little records remain indicate that for the most part, women gladiators fought other women or beasts. Women gladiators were not referred to specifically as women in historical records, but instead as low-class gladiators. So it is possible that they were given the same opportunities as other low-class gladiators. One opportunity for them was the chance to become rich and high-class through repeated victories. Your heart sinks as you recognize Septima. She is a famous gladiator who has overcome many obstacles and opponents to become one of the most renowned gladiators in the city of Rome. She's a woman, but that's no cause for laughter, only for fear, since you know she has had to work harder than others for her celebrity status. She is wearing heavy metal armor and carries on one hand a rectangular Roman army shield. In her other hand she holds a pike, and on her hip is a sheathed gladius sword. You and Septima approach each other. You see her smirk underneath the shadow of her helmet, and she raises her weapons. You raise yours, and the two of you quickly begin to fight. The combat is intense, and you've never fought as hard in your life. Finally, an opportunity presents itself. Septima lowers her guard for a moment, and you strike. Roll your dice and add the number to your attack score now. Okay, if your dice roll plus your attack score is 16 or more, you manage to sink your weapon into Septima's ribs. The crowd and the Emperor may have granted her mercy, but you know that she is increasingly unlikely to recover from her injury as she falls to the ground, blood pooling around her heavily armored figure. If your dice roll plus your attack score is 15 or less, you strike forward with all your might. All your hopes and dreams are carried by this one swing of your weapon, and for a moment you think victory is assured. However, she easily sidesteps your attack and slashes across with her sword. The life expectancy of a gladiator was much lower than the average Roman citizen. Research performed on Roman headstones has indicated that the average age a gladiator lived to was only 27 years old. Roman gladiators could potentially earn their freedom after 3 to 5 years of fighting, but many gladiators died within their first year of fighting and did not make it past 4 years of combat. The end. You collapse to the ground, knowing immediately that Septima's sword plunged far too deeply. You don't feel any pain, but you almost immediately feel weaker as you begin to bleed out. Aware of the crowd cheering madly, you look around. Marilla is being handed a pouch of what you can only assume is money. She doesn't even spare you a second glance before she leaves. Knowing that you're done for, you give up, and the last thing you see is the scorching sun high in the sky. So, definitely a brutal, gruesome side to Rome. And the video clip that you're going to be watching here on YouTube here after this lesson is the story of Perpetua, a really famous story of Christians during this time of persecution. And it's definitely one of those instances where it's not a pretty part of history. It's really it's sad. It's not a place in history that we want to return to. And so I always show this story of Perpetua to my classes when we study ancient Rome, because she has a really inspirational story, and her story is being told over and over even today. So you also have an opportunity to do a story of your own. So regardless of your outcome in the Colosseum, you're going to be telling me your own gladiator tale. So you're just writing me a 3-paragraph adventure story featuring your gladiator. This story can either be a day in their life, or the story could take place over the games in the gladiator simulation. Incorporate at least 3 details about gladiators that you've learned. There were a lot of fun facts spread out throughout the slideshow. Okay, so just kind of incorporate that into a little short story about your gladiator. So you've participated in the simulation, you're watching about Perpetua, a pretty famous Christian martyr during this time, and then you're also writing me a story about your gladiator. All right, so enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this piece of history and it came alive as blood-free as possible. It's kind of gruesome, but it's an important thing for us to study because a lot of our ancestry as Christians comes from these individuals who stood firm for their faith, and that's something that we want to be able to do as well, and there's a lot we can learn from them. All right, have fun.